Hi again, and we can consider this lecture as the last lecture about building our web application. But we still have something more to do. We have to deploy our web application on a live server so that we can visit that through a URL. Because for now, as you know, this is just running on our local computer. And yeah, this lecture is a short one, so I'm just going to calculate the average height out of the database table and then send that average back to the user email address. So let's do that. This is our sendemail.py script, and we have to calculate that somewhere here in our main Python script. And how do we go about calculating an average out of the database table field? Well, we would need all the values of that field. So that means we're talking about a query. And so when should we do that query? Well, we want to calculate the average, and we also want to include the data of the current user to that average, which means the data that this user is entering in their session. And yeah, we can see that here we are sending the user data to the database, so we are committing the changes to our database table, and that suggests we can calculate an average just after that statement. So here, let's create a variable where we'll store the average value. Let's say average height. That would be equal to, again, db.session.query. And in this case, we need to apply an average function. And that average function is made available by the core SQL Alchemy library, which we have already installed, and the SQL class, and we need func from the SQL class of this library. And once we have done that, we go down here in our query, and then we can set the arguments of our query. We can pass here the table field that we want to query. That would be data.height with an underscore, but we don't need the entire field, we only need the average of data.height. So again, the average method of this class which we imported out of SQL Alchemy. And yeah, now we are almost ready to send this average value to the send email function, so that the send email function sends the email to the user with that average, so we can incorporate that here. But before we do that, it's good to make sure this statement here is working well. So print average height, save the script. Yep, I have an invalid syntax there. You probably noticed that I didn't write import here. I didn't notice that. And try again. Now it's working. So maybe reload the page, and let's just enter some dummy data there. We just need to know this print function is producing the correct output. So p.com, and let me zoom out the page. Okay, I hope you see it. And 176. Submit. And the web app is working smoothly, as we can see it. And now let's look at this line that is being printed in here. As you can see, this is not a number, so not exactly what we were expecting. This is an SQL statement, and Python is printing that out. So we need to do a trick here again. And what that trick does is it applies the scalar method to this object, so to this SQL statement, dot scalar with brackets, and you don't pass anything there. And what that will do, it will extract the scalar out of this statement, and a scalar is just a number, so nothing fancy about that. Save the script. Yeah, I'll try this again. Maybe C at b.com this time. And yeah, now we can see the actual average. So it's 176, but we have quite a lot of decimal points in there, and we surely don't want to send that number to the user as an email. So let's apply something in there. And yeah, what I'll do is apply a round function. And so average height equals to round the current average height. So what that will do, it will round off this number to 1 decimal point. Or if you leave this empty, it will just round up the number without any decimal points. Or you can go up to 2 or 3 or whatever you want. Good, and yeah, that should do it. D this time at b.com, and let me try another value, let's say 200, and submit. Yeah, this is the average. By adding 200 there, I increase the average from 176 to 182 centimeters in the case of my application. Maybe you're using some different units there. And yeah, I think this is all clear, and let's go ahead now and send this average height value to the email function as well, so that the email function then will do something like average. Let's call this average height as well, so it's just a parameter. It will be a local variable in here. It doesn't have to be the same as this one. Good. Average height, so we could do something like average height, or let me maximize this, of all is a placeholder and maybe a period there, and then inside the tuple we pass the first variable for the first placeholder and the second variable for the second placeholder. Yeah, that should do it, and we're almost done there, except of if we let me save this and resize this. So yeah, we're almost done, except of this function is being called before we even check for an existing email address in our database. Which means if we pass average height there, the average calculated by these two statements, that wouldn't make much sense because we haven't calculated average height just yet. We don't want to send the user an average without getting their data as well, their height. Which means we take this statement, cut it from there and put it in here. Make sure you indent it, just like that, and yep. So email height, average height, and we send those three in here. And yeah, we could also calculate something very quickly here, which is the count and db.session. I'll explain that in a minute. Query and data.height, and give me the count. So what we're actually counting is the height values that we have in our database table. Why would we want that? Well, you're sending the average value to the users, but they may also want to have an idea of how statistically significant is this value. Like if you have 3 values collected in total, that wouldn't make much sense to say like the average value of population or whatever is this one here. So it's good to send the user the count actually, which we are calculating here. So up here we did almost the same thing, but here we applied a filter. So we filter only those rows where the data.email, the value of this field was equal to the email address that the user was entering in that session. But here we are getting all the rows. So count, and then we pass that to the function call count, and also in here count. You're not seeing these, so let me do view to the software app, and now we have average height of all is this value here, and that is calculated out of this number of users, of people maybe. And yep, count here. That looks good. Almost. We can also make this bold, strong there, strong here, strong there, and there as well. Good. Finally, I'll save this, see if we get any syntax error there. No, everything looks good. app.py, save this as well. I think it's now safe to test the application. But in order to get that email, you want to make sure you're using an email address that you haven't used before in that application. So you don't want to send an existing email address. Yeah, I'll make sure in this is database site collector, go to SQL, and you'd want to delete. So if I do select all from data, that's a table, you'll see that I have this my email address there, and I want to delete that. So delete from data where email, so the name of the field, and you want to use single quotes. So email is equal to my Hotmail address. Yeah. Execute that. One row affected, so that should be gone. I can prove that data. Yeah, my Hotmail address is not there now, so I can go ahead and try this now. Good. Submit. I have an error there. Data has no attribute height. Yeah, because in here that should be an underscore. So that's the name of the column, as you can see in here. So it's height with an underscore. Yeah, sorry for that. The errors happen all the time. Go back again. If I try this again, it seems like we've got something from that email address already. So at least we know that when we enter an existing email address, that is not working. Yep, now I have to go here again and delete from data where email equals to so this is the query here, and execute. One row affected. Good. Oh, let me try this again. Hope this will work this time. Submit. Thank you for your submission, and now I should expect an email in here. Let me refresh. Yep, that was quick. Hey there, your height is 176, average height of all is this, and that is calculated out of 5 people, out 5 of people. Yep. We go here, out of that number of people. Yeah, that should be better. Anyway, you get the idea. And if you want to break the line in here at this point, you could do something like you add a BR HTML tag there, and that will create a new line. So that will break the line in here. And yeah, we should have 2 lines, and we could be a little bit polite by adding thanks. Yep. Let's try this again. Loss 5000. Good. Go to the SQL query, apply this so that we get rid of the existing email address, and again submit, success, and go here. We should have another, yeah. Let's see. Good. Average height of all is calculated out of 5 people. Thanks. Beautiful. And we're done with our application. Sorry if that was too much, but I believe we did quite a lot of things throughout these lectures. And the good part of this is that you can modify this application. This is highly customizable. You can customize this, you can tweak it, and you can adjust it so that you gather your own data or any other information that you might be interested on. And yeah, this wraps up these instructions. But in the next lecture, I'll show you how to get this application as database and deploy it on a live server. Quite interesting. And yeah, I'll talk to you in the next lecture.